You know, in life, there are a few things that we know for certain: death, taxes, and that whenever a new Star Wars project releases, the fandom will always find a way to complain about it. See, over a month ago, The Acolyte finished its first season, and judging by its IMDb rating, it was very well received. It seems like everybody's raving about this show. Everybody loves it. It's the greatest thing that Star Wars has seen since The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. This is exactly what the fandom needs. This is exactly what the franchise has been yearning for years, and this is the thing that's going to reignite the franchise and bring it into a new golden age. I haven't seen something that's made me feel so inferior as a writer in my entire life. Competently written scenes with characters making logical decisions that reflect their own clearly laid out interests. This show has made me decide that I'll never make it as a writer because I could never come up with something so brilliantly and competently written as... Guys, I feel bad for the Star Wars franchise. This is a show that I've actively defended on multiple occasions because I truly thought that later on it would get better and that everything we were confused about earlier on would be more clear and make more sense. And while I was right on most of my predictions, that last one didn't really age well. Now that the entire show is out, I honestly can't believe something like this came from an industry writer, got passed through the Lucasfilm story group, greenlighted by a CEO, budgeted, filmed, edited, advertised, and released. Because take a look at the situation Star Wars is in. The sequel trilogy was more divisive than the prequels, every Star Wars show gets less and less viewership than the last, and the Star Wars fandom as a whole is more divided than it's ever been. If you're Lucasfilm and you're looking at the numbers trying to rectify the situation, then what's the most logical thing you would try and do? Maybe bring back Colin Trevorrow and let him make a movie since you threw out his Episode 9 script. Maybe make a Star Wars Battlefront 3 because there's a desperate need for a new AAA multiplayer Star Wars game. Maybe dust off some cancelled projects and greenlight Son of Dathomir as a limited one-season show, or go back and complete the Solo trilogy. Or you could ignore all logic and reasonable decision-making, and instead of giving the fans what they actually want, hire the former personal assistant of freaking Harvey Weinstein to make a show that takes place in a time that people don't care about and features characters that nobody likes, a show that tries so hard to be mysterious that it forgets its own plot and in a span of 8 episodes manages to overcomplicate a simple revenge story without resolving all of the loose ends. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you The Acolyte, a show that was so horrible that it got cancelled after 1 season. And I say cancelling because Lucasfilm has a way of cancelling projects without publicly admitting that they're done. Just look at Rian Johnson's trilogy. Because that's something that every time it's ever brought up in conversation or anybody asks a question to Kathleen Kennedy, she always says something along the lines of, well, it's still happening, but we just haven't found a right time, or there's some scheduling conflict. But I don't think there's a single person alive who believes that those movies are still happening. And for them to actually come out and say that they're done with The Acolyte, and as of right now they have no plans of making any future seasons, is a big move. It's a big admission on their part. It sends a message to the fandom that they are heard and they are not going to continue with what they didn't like. Because at the end of the day, most studios out there don't care about telling a great story. They care about what people are watching, and Acolyte just didn't have people watching it. Because The Acolyte has the least watched finale of all Star Wars shows. Now on social media, everybody is putting out hashtags to renew The Acolyte. But the problem is that these same people also said that if you did not enjoy The Acolyte, then don't watch it. And that's exactly what happened. Nobody watched it, and now the show is canceled. Because Lucasfilm doesn't want to make a show that nobody's going to watch, and honestly, I don't blame them for that. It's a logical, business-minded decision where they cut out the garbage so that they can focus on more products that people actually like. Stuff like The Mandalorian and Grogu, or Ahsoka Season 2, and various other projects. Now, I want to be clear with this. I'm glad that we're not getting Acolyte Season 2 because I wasn't a fan of the show, and I'd like Lucasfilm to focus on other things, but I'm also worried that Lucasfilm is getting the wrong message from the Acolyte hate. Because over the last few years, Lucasfilm has gotten the wrong message of why people didn't like certain products they've come out with, like Solo. Kathleen Kennedy thought that people didn't watch Solo and that the movie lost money because nobody liked that they recasted Han Solo as Alden Ehrenreich when in reality, that wasn't the case at all. The reason Solo lost money was because people that saw The Last Jedi became disenfranchised and did not have any interest in seeing Solo. I like to play devil's advocate, so I'm going to look at things with a different perspective. So, when The Force Awakens released, people complained that that movie was way too similar to A New Hope. It featured a strong protagonist from a desert planet, and a massive superweapon that could destroy planets, and a space battle at the end that resulted in destroying said weapon, and plenty of other things that were way too similar. So then, Lucasfilm hears the criticism and releases The Last Jedi, which instead of being a direct rehash of Empire Strikes Back, decides to subvert our expectations and go a completely different direction. Characters get killed off, Rey is related to nobody, and the film is overall way too different for the fandom's tastes, so that movie got rejected. So then Lucasfilm hears our criticisms and releases The Rise of Skywalker, which then tries to backtrack The Last Jedi and go closer to The Force Awakens, but then that movie gets rejected. So then they start releasing the Disney Plus TV shows like The Mandalorian, Ahsoka, and Book of Boba Fett. And among all of these shows, people said that they were tired of that era. They wanted Star Wars to go to a new place. They wanted to move away from the Skywalker Saga era. So you know what they do? They release The Acolyte, which takes place in a new era and has lightsabers, the Force, and everything that these new Disney Plus shows has been lacking. This is what the fandom has been asking for. And you know what happened? The fandom rejected it. And rightfully so, because the numbers don't lie. But if you're Lucasfilm and you're looking at the numbers, how can you really figure out what the fans want if The Acolyte has pretty much everything you would expect from Star Wars in it? It has the Jedi, it has spaceships, it has the Force, the Jedi Council is back, we see masters and apprentices, we see people getting trained, we see the Sith. That is pretty much everything that Star Wars has. So what route could they really take from here that would lead to everybody being happy? And the answer to that, I honestly don't know. All I can say is, for anybody hoping for Knights of the Old Republic content, maybe in another life. For now, I think Lucasfilm is just going to stick to giving us The Mandalorian because that's what the fanbase responded to the best. That's why we're getting the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, and not an Acolyte movie, or a Book of Boba Fett movie, or an Obi-Wan movie. Because at the end of the day, people pay with their wallets and their time, and nobody watched The Acolyte, and everybody watched The Mandalorian. And whether that's a good or a bad thing is up to you, but for the fandom as a whole, we have spoken. Anyways, I'm going to bed because it's 8 in the morning, so later.